Bruce Owen, and I am the Vice President of Employee and Community Impact at Equinix. Equinix is the world's digital infrastructure company, and I lead a team called Community and Belonging, which is responsible for diversity, inclusion, and belonging, employee well-being, and community impact. Maybe I'll just start by saying it's a work in progress. But the philosophy is we believe in transparency, so just being as transparent as we can. And so we break it up between these elements of diversity, inclusion, and belonging. So sometimes people try and merge them all together. So on diversity, we measure diversity using metrics. We have internal placemats that we publish every quarter that go out to all senior leaders that represent all the aspects of diversity that we're able to measure, which include gender and race and ethnicity in the US. And we are embarking on a project right now actually to widen that outside of the US. We do it in the UK too, but across the rest of the 26 countries that we operate in. And we have aspirational objectives. We have objectives at a company-wide level on where we want to be across these different aspects of diversity. And we hold ourselves accountable from the board and our executive staff and at a senior leader level in terms of making progress against them. Inclusion's a little harder, to measure, but we rely largely on survey data. So we use a pulse survey every quarter to get a sense from where our employees are. And then we look at the experience of what is the experience of people from underrepresented communities at Equinix, and how do we take action to create a more inclusive environment, and in which pockets of the organization do we see higher degrees of inclusion or exclusion? And then maybe the other area that we measure is engagement. So for instance, participation in our employee connection networks. And so we have networks for minority communities and allies. So you can sign up to be a member of our Equinix Women's Leadership Network or our Black Connect team. We have 8 employee connection networks, and we encourage participation, whether you're a member of that community or whether you identify as an ally. And so those are some of the ways we kind of measure. So engagement, pulse survey results, and then on the diversity side, we actually have placemats that we publish, and as just a key metric for us as an organization. Measuring diversity and inclusion is a little different. Measuring diversity is you're measuring difference, and so we can, we public about our metrics around gender and race and ethnicity in the US, where you're able to capture that data. And it's hard to be able to hold it up and say like, hey, we're making progress, but it's not as fast as we want. And there's a vulnerability that comes with transparency, but I think it's so necessary in terms of building trust, because you want to be able to say, here's where we're doing well and here's where we're not, and these are the steps we're taking in order to to change the position that we're in. And I can see why a lot of organizations hesitate on transparency, but I don't think that you can make progress until you're willing to be vulnerable and transparent. Creating an environment where there's others who look like you at all levels of the organization. And so, representation really matters. It really does. Secondly, creating an environment where you are believed. That your story, people come from a position in believing your story. So often you find that, especially if you've come from a historically underrepresented group, when you share your experience, people from majority groups often come from a posture of non-belief. And so if you change the posture of, I'm going to start actually as a position of believing, I think it starts creating a place where leaders can begin to thrive. And then, thirdly is being valued for your perspective, which is this idea of inclusion. It's actually that, having a different opinion or having a contrarian view is actually seen as valued and not a hindrance. Or like, oh, here they go again. They're saying something that is against what I want to have. And then, for us as an organization, we have this idea that we want every employee to confidently say, I'm safe and I belong and I matter. And in that environment, I do think it breeds leaders of the future. And then lastly, fun. I mean, to be in a place that's just fun to work in, it's like, be serious about the right things and have fun about other things is, I think the idea is like, how do you creating an environment where people want to grow and develop and lead needs to be a place that you want to come back to. And I think it's these elements all held together. So as an example, in my team, we think about the reason we have well-being and community impact and diversity, inclusion, belonging in one function is that we think about this intersection across. If you're able to have your emotional and your mental and your physical well-being cared for within the work environment, and you're able to work in a team where there's people that look like you, where you are able to be yourself, where you're able to be valued for your perspective and your experience, and if you're able to make an impact in the communities that you care about, those elements, the intersection of them is what really makes us human. It's those elements that allow us to thrive in the workplace. And so we think about that intersection really deliberately. So many organizations sort of have them siloed. It's like, and now drum roll, we're going to talk about diversity. And now drum roll, we're going to talk about mental health. And now drum roll, we're going to think about community impact. And actually for us, we think about the intersection of them and woven into the fabric of how we do business and how we show up every day. And I think that creates an environment, a comfortable place where people want to work and where leaders of the future want to flourish. And so that's kind of the way I think about this intersection between how you develop leaders and how you create a comfortable place for someone to work.